Mackenzie Johnston with Tri-State Livestock News, bringing you discussions concerning fair cattle markets. Today we have the opportunity to chat with Kyle Hemmert. He is the owner and operator of Oakley Livestock Commission Company located in Oakley, Kansas. To start off with, can you just tell me a little bit about your background and your involvement within the cattle industry?
So I've grown up around cattle all my life. My dad owned this livestock auction barn here in Oakley, Kansas, and I bought it from my parents 28 years ago. So I've been in the auction business all my life, watching it grow up since second grade. I bought my first calf, so I also have cows, a cow herd, background, some cattle, and run an auction barn. So I guess I'm heavily invested. Raise my kids through this stuff. It's been a great way to make a living and a great way to raise your kids, no doubt.
What do you feel are the major issues standing in the way of fair cattle markets?
So I'm pretty simple. I'm pretty straightforward. Packer concentration first and foremost. I mean, the government. I hate to complain about government. We don't want government in our lives, but we all have to play by rules. But the biggest thing is this packer concentration and letting these guys gobble each other up. And so now we're controlled 80 to 85% of the market by big four major packers, and we've let that go by the wayside. And now we're kind of standing around wondering what the heck what we're going to do about this. So that's first and foremost is the packer concentration. I'd say secondly, our inability to distinguish our product, our USA-made product from imports coming into our country. Producers don't mind competing, but we need a way to distinguish our product from somebody else's product, and mandatory country of origin labeling does that. Can't believe we can't get it. We've got it on everything else, as you're well aware. I just can't believe that we can't get a conglomeration of any and all senators and representatives from all the states where cattle, serve a big in the industry to back this thing, including Kansas. I mean, Kansas senators and House of Reps people, I guess they just don't get it. They just don't care, or they've been bought off. So mandatory country of origin labeling is a major issue standing in the way. The checkoff is another one. It's taxation without representation. I've been saying this for a long, long time. It seems like they fight against us. They've been fighting against us with 5014. They want to fight against us with mandatory country of origin labeling. They won't fight against fake meat because it's discriminatory against other protein products, which I think is a bunch of bull. And then it seems like the members and the ability to get good members on the Cattlemen's Beef Board, it seems like it's a pretty closed circle. I mean, you're well aware of the Federation and how all this stuff works, and it's pretty hard to get representation on there from independent producers. So those are just a sample of some of the things. The biggest thing I don't like right now, what's going on, is probably CFAP. The Coronavirus Food Assistance Program has come out, and it's almost like hush money. Because, I've got cows. I guess you'd be a fool not to get the money because it's there. But I don't like it because it's not fixing our markets. It's kind of giving people a big cash injection, and it's kind of making them think, oh, gee, this is kind of all right. But our markets are broke, so we need to get our markets back. We need to get them fixed. Producers need to get some leverage back of some kind. So, and CFAP does not do that.
With the CFAP payments that you mentioned, do you think since the government handed those out, it's essentially just quieted producers and they do feel like things are okay and we're going to go forward and forget about what happened to us 6 months ago?
So NCBA, big time for the CFAP payments. We wanted our markets back. RCAF USA wanted our markets back. We're fighting to get our markets back. Here comes this, this Band-Aid, if you want to call it that. I don't know if it was done on purpose, but I do know that some rather, all the large feed yards reap the rewards of that CFAP payment big time, including Packers. Packers, I can't remember how much JBS got, but it's an ungodly amount. But these are bad, especially for the bigger yard, the more you get. So
you mentioned Packer concentration. What is a solution that could be implemented to solve that issue?
Well, I think it's so far gone down the road now that the enforcement of the antitrust and letting these guys merge and buy each other out, politicians look the other way. We had no enforcement of the antitrust. So it's getting so late in the ball game now, but I'd like to say just no more mergers, but in all honesty, I think we might be back to the 1918, we need to break the Packers up. Right. I know it sounds pretty drastic, but I think we're there. Something drastic needs to be done. A couple other solutions, again, is to give some leverage back to the producer. And I'm a big-time believer in mandatory country of origin labeling. I don't mind competing with Brazilian imports. They can probably bring them in a little bit cheaper, but I am a buy American, hire American person. I do believe that especially through COVID-19, people have realized that it's very important to know where their food source is coming from and that it's a good, steady source. So food security within the nation is big. And I do believe that people would support mandatory country of origin labeling. I think the 5014, this passage of the 5014, with the mandatory price reporting, it's coming up here pretty quick. This is definitely going to force the packers to compete in the open market. I run an auction barn. It's hard for me to imagine why it shouldn't be 100%. Make them compete in the open market 100%. But I guess we got to start somewhere. You know, there's been a lot of research back and forth from NCBA versus anybody else about what percent it needs to be. I believe it needs to be 100%. But that's my own personal opinion because I run an auction barn and I just can't imagine selling less than 100%. The beef checkoff reform, that's a whole nother one. I think we've got the referendum coming up. Hopefully we can get enough signatures. It'd be awesome to get the signatures to whether you're for it or against it. It'd just be nice to vote again. It's been 35 or 37 years. I can't remember exactly what it is since we've had a vote on the beef checkoff and whether or not we want to keep it or abolish it. I do believe beef checkoff reform would be the best, but I also do believe we might just do away with it because if we're going to promote that beef is just beef, then I don't need to be doing a dollar head checkoff on my cattle.
What are your thoughts on USDA's push to implement RFID tags across the industry?
This is a good touchy subject. The biggest thing is I'm running an auction barn. Everybody's still using the silver clips, brucellosis tags for identifying cows. I think it's been working fantastic. We can trace cows back pretty quick. So then it becomes a liberty issue, whether or not we're going to get this forced down our throat. And I can't believe it's going to be forced down our throat by USDA. And I do believe there's some people that are going to be reaping the benefits and getting filthy rich, including these tag makers that are pushing that. But first and foremost, I think it's a liberty issue. And then you've got people that are trying to tell you, hey, how can you not be for RFID? It's for disease traceability. I say, okay, I'll give you disease traceability. I'll give you RFID if you'll give me mandatory country of origin labeling. Because with all these imports, do they have an RFID system? No, they do not. So the traceability becomes big, not for only our disease traceability, but how about disease traceability on stuff that's being imported into our country? So I don't like RFID being shoved down our throats. If mandatory country of origin labeling, I will give you RFID, because then I do believe it makes sense together.
You mentioned imports. What are your thoughts on imports of cattle and beef?
Our camp is apolitical, but in the same breath, Trump got elected on Buy American, Hire American. So we thought, well, here we go. We finally got our guy. Because ranchers, USA ranchers, are not afraid to compete. We just aren't. We have a superior product. There's no doubt about it. So trade is good. I do believe that trade is good. But if we can't distinguish our product from imports, then we shouldn't be importing. Because American ranchers don't produce enough beef for American consumers. And I see it in my business every day. I mean, if we were profitable, I'll bet you that we would be expanding our cow herds. Our cow herds are record level lows right now. So American ranchers are not afraid to compete. And again, I do believe trade is good. It's like Trump. Trump on that day, standing up there on the podium, said, why are we importing from some of these countries that we're not doing business back and forth with? I mean, that's the big thing is trade is good if we're trading back and forth, and it's fair trade. I mean, that's the key word is fair trade. If we're manipulating the currency of money valuation, and then maybe the other countries are price supporting their producers, and that's where CFAP comes into me. I do not want to be a price support CFAP person. I want to raise cattle, and I want us to be on an open market, a competitive market. So I don't have a problem with imports so long as we're trading with good trade partners and we're able to distinguish our product.
What are your thoughts on the DOJ investigation into our 4 big beef processors?
I'm just a little bit guilty, Mackenzie. I think you're pretty young. I'm a little bit guilty of being of the instant gratification crowd because I guess when you're in the auction business, you buy cattle, you sell cattle, you move on, go on to the next set of cattle. So I'm a little bit guilty of wanting to be an instant gratification person. The Department of Justice investigation is going to take time. I can't believe that it takes 2, 3, 4, 5 years to get things going into an investigation or a lawsuit both ways. So it sure would be nice to have a smoking gun of some kind to prove collusion and to prove this price manipulation. Some of the statistics are pretty obvious, especially after the Tyson fire, with what happened after the Tyson fire. To me, that's too obvious what happened. So I'm gonna plead that I like to think that the Department of Justice is too busy with all the other things going on in our country right now. So hopefully after the election, we'll get back to doing some business and get back to the corruption that's going on within the beef industry. Because look how forefront we started, hearing about the price manipulation, and then here comes along COVID-19, and it just seems like the beef industry took a back seat after COVID-19. So hopefully the Department of Justice investigation will get going again.
What do you see happening to the independent cattle producer if substantial changes aren't made to improve our cattle markets?
I'm seeing it every day in my business. I think we're dangerously close to vertical integration. So things better get to changing quick. Like, and when I say things, I'm talking we need to get some leverage back to the producer. I'm seeing the very few independent producers that do come to my auction to buy some cattle and fatten them out. COVID-19 has exposed them more so than any time ever because they sat there with cattle that they had fat and couldn't get them marketed. And man, you know how tough it is to sell some cattle to some guys right now to fatten? I mean, it's turned some of my people that fatten cattle into just backgrounders. They're going to buy some cattle, but they will not fatten them out. It's turned them into backgrounders. I've seen some people go out of business. I'm seeing some cherry picking going on. I mean, between beef quality assurance and this global roundtable for sustainable beef, you're seeing some cherry picking going on as the packers are dictating too many things of what they're going to force the producers to do, or they won't buy their cattle. I mean, that's not good. Vertical integration is dangerously close. Look, they may not own the cattle and they may not own the land, but they're going to own the person, and they're going to own whether or not the ability or inability to merchandise cattle, unless they do what the packers tell them, is here. That's vertical integration.
What is your outlook for the market going forward, especially as we're getting into fall and we're looking at these big runs of calves?
So I'm optimistic. I mean, the country sounds like even just right where I'm at, in my hometown here, you go east of here and there's tremendous amounts of rains, a lot of crops, going to be bountiful feed crops. You go west, it's dry. And it sounds like if you go north or south, it's real spotty. So pretty optimistic because we do have some feed in my area, but you go not very far west, it's going to be tough. They're looking at having to buy hay, and this hay is going to be high, it looks like. So I'm a little concerned. That'd be nice if we have I want to call it a fairly nice open winter, but if hay gets in more short supply, that the ability to keep cows until spring, until we get something going, could get tough. But I am optimistic. Look, again, our calf herds, our cow size herds are at record level lows. If we could level off these imports, or I mean, when Trump talked to banning imports, I mean, you've seen some people probably start licking their chops because that would be tremendous. But I am optimistic. I mean, you can't be in this business and not be optimistic. Otherwise, you just quit.
If you could sum it up into one sentence, what does the cattle industry need most today?
Very simply, we've got to get some leverage back to the producers. That's the bottom line. Because we have, and when I say we, because we've let these guys get so big and so monopolistic, oligopoly, whatever it is, they have way too much power. We've got to get some powers back to the producer. Country of origin labeling helps give it back to the producer because his ability to distinguish his product again to the consumer. So it's nice that we have the consumers. I do believe the consumers are on our side. I mean, I think if they find out, and I'm thinking that they are going to find out, I'm very optimistic about mandatory country of origin labeling. When they find out that product of USA does not necessarily mean it was raised by an American rancher, they're going to be pretty PO'd off about that, and they'll try to help us. I mean, we've got that petition where we have 400,000 signatures. That's pretty signifying to me that they have an interest in what's going on in the food they eat. So we got to get some leverage back to the producers somehow.
Do you have any closing statements you would like to make regarding these cattle markets and the cattle industry?
Got to stay optimistic. Got to keep fighting. That's the biggest thing, is we all got to keep fighting. And even in my customer base here at the auction barn, I mean, I've got 11 or 1,200 people in my computer that buy and sell cattle with me. We've all got to become fighters. I think a lot of people have become more aware of what's going on. But I do not, again, I hate to go back to the CFAP payments, but the CFAP payments have made people just kind of turn, and it's almost like hush money. So we've got to keep fighting for what we need. We've got to keep fighting for all these things that are important to us. If you don't fight, it's going to be too late to even have a chance to fight. And I appreciate people like yourself, Mackenzie, that you're helping us tell the story. You're getting the story out. It's very important that we relay to one another the importance of doing this and doing it now.